have to tell you something. What is it? The groom, he's not who you think he is. Don't call anyone. Not your mother. Not your friends. Just don't.
A perfect grace. Time stands still in this sweet place. A fragile promise softly made in hues of hope that will not fade.
Oh my God, is this really happening? I believe it. This is all so surreal.
Me and you. But beneath the gleam, a chilling dread, words unspoken, thoughts unsaid, an elegant cage so finely spun. Where do the broken feelings run? This silent tension starts to climb, stealing moments.
See this pattern? It's perfect. Check the alignment. Very important. Yes! This is the one.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat.
Fragile smile, a held back sigh, truth we bury way up high. Every movement a delicate lie beneath this perfect painted sky.
I thought she was warning me to stay quiet. I didn't know she was trying to stop me from walking into something I might never come back from.
It all started as the air tastes like jasmine and expensive lies. White rose petals drift through golden afternoon light, settling on polished mahogany chairs where 300 guests wait in their finest aso ibi, their designer jeels catching sunlight like crowns. The DJ tests his equipment. Afrobeats love songs about forever promises, and somewhere beyond the silk drapes, Chidi stands at an altar decorated with more flowers than Amara's mother earns in 6 months. He's smiling that smile, the one that convinced her to give up everything, the one she used to believe meant safety. The bridal suite door opens without warning, and Chidinma enters like a ghost in red lace, her jeel wrapped so perfectly it could be armor. And Amara's heart knows before her mind catches up that something fundamental is about to crack. Chidinma's heels click across Italian marble. 3 steps, 4, 5, each one measured, deliberate, the walk of someone carrying a grenade they're not sure they should throw. She doesn't speak until she's close enough that Amara can smell her perfume. Chanel No. 5, the same scent Chidi's mother wears. The scent of women who've learned to smile while delivering fatal blows. Don't call anyone, Chidinma whispers, and her voice is so quiet it could be Amara's own conscience finally breaking its 3-year silence. Her lips barely move, her expression remains camera-ready, but her eyes... God. Her eyes hold something that looks like pity mixed with urgency, mixed with the kind of desperate warning you give someone standing on train tracks who can't hear the approaching thunder. Not your mother, not your friends, just don't. The words land like physical blows, each syllable a small earthquake in Amara's chest, and before she can form a response, before she can ask what that means or why or please explain, Chidinma straightens up, adjusts her jeel with practiced grace, and walks out. The door closes with a soft click that somehow sounds like a cell door locking. Amara stands frozen in her wedding dress, Italian lace over silk, off-shoulder with hand-sewn beadwork that caught light like scattered diamonds, a dress she didn't choose but learned to call beautiful. And her reflection in the full-length mirror shows a stranger, someone polished, acceptable, empty. Her phone sits on the vanity between a bouquet she didn't select and makeup in shades Chidi's mother approved, and her mother's contact photo fills the screen. Mama Adaze, mid-laugh. Arms spread wide, the way she looked before Amara started making excuses to avoid visits. 1 tap, less than a second. Her mother would answer before the first ring ended, voice already warm with excitement. Noir M, are you ready? Are you happy? And Amara would have to answer, would have to decide right now whether to tell the truth or swallow it one more time, and her fingers hover over the screen but won't complete the motion. Outside, someone tests the microphone. a sharp feedback whine that makes her flinch, and guests laugh, that carefree sound of people attending a celebration, people who believe in the fairy tale about to unfold. Zainab is out there somewhere, probably third row left where Amara requested, probably already crying happy tears, i.e. probably wearing that royal blue Aso Ebi and thanking God her best friend finally found someone after all those years focused on building instead of belonging. But Zainab doesn't know. Nobody knows. 3 years ago, Amara stood in a different mirror in her Yaba studio, cramped, loud, alive, wearing Ankara she'd designed herself. Dye still on her fingers, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of sewing machines and young girls who called her Auntie Amara, with reverence in their voices, girls who believed she was building something that mattered. She was. She had been. Before she met a man who made building feel like settling, who convinced her that her dreams were cute hobbies she could return to later, after she'd proven herself worthy of his world. The dress tightens around her ribs like it knows she's remembering. Like the Italian lace itself is complicit in her erasure, and Amara picks up the phone, puts it down, picks it up again. Her hand shakes so badly the screen blurs, and she can't tell if it's fear or rage or the terrible clarity that comes when you finally admit you've been wrong about everything that mattered. Don't call anyone. She thought she wants to believe that Chidinma was warning her to stay quiet, to keep some family secret, to preserve the illusion. But what if? The music outside swells. That Timmy DeColo song about finding the one, about prayers answered, about love that completes you. And Amara stares at her reflection one more time. The dress they chose. The hairstyle his mother approved. Jewellery in the Okonkwo family colours. Deep green and gold, the colours of old money and older power. Not her colours. Never hers. She thinks about the last time she touched her sewing machine, 6 months ago. 8. It sits in storage now, gathering dust beside boxes of fabric samples and design sketches, the physical evidence of a life she was too afraid to fight for. The door handle turns and the wedding planner's bright voice cuts through. Miss Amara, they're ready for you. Everyone's waiting. Ready. Everyone's waiting. The words should feel like excitement, but land like a sentencing, and Amara realizes with sudden, crushing certainty that she's not afraid of making the call. She's afraid that if she does, she'll have to face what she's spent 3 years running from, the truth that love shouldn't cost this much, that she wasn't being mature or compromising or building partnership, she was disappearing piece by piece and calling it growth. What if Chidinma wasn't trying to keep her quiet? What if she was trying to stop Amara from walking into something she might never escape? The first time Amara met Chidi, she had indigo dye under her fingernails and thread caught in her hair. Victoria Island gallery opening, the kind where wine costs more than her monthly fabric budget, and she'd only attended because Zainab dragged her there claiming she needed to network with people who could afford custom pieces. He approached while she stood before a painting she didn't understand, and his cologne arrived 3 seconds before he did, something expensive that smelled like boardrooms and inherited confidence. You look like you'd rather be somewhere else, he said, and she laughed because it was true, because her mind was still back in Yaba, where 3 apprentices waited for her feedback on their final collection pieces, where her studio hummed with the particular music of 8 sewing machines running simultaneously, where she belonged. I have fabric swatches calling my name, she admitted, and he smiled like she'd said something charming instead of honest. Within 2 weeks, he was sending her flowers with notes about how refreshing it was to meet a woman who actually created things instead of just consuming them. Within a month, he was taking her to Calabar for the weekend, first-class tickets and a beachfront suite where the oceans sounded like permission to want more than she'd allowed herself. The changes didn't announce themselves as erasure. They arrived dressed as care, as concern, as a man who wanted to protect her from struggle. Why are you still doing those university workshops? Chidi asked one evening, his hand on her thigh in the back of his Range Rover, traffic thick around them like the future pressing close. You're talented enough for private clients who'll actually pay what you're worth. She tried explaining how those students, girls from Ajagunle and Mushin and Surulere, who saved for months to afford her weekend classes, how they reminded her why she started designing in the first place, how teaching felt like planting seeds. But he kissed her temple and said, "You have such a good heart, but you can't save everyone, baby." And somehow his logic felt like wisdom instead of dismissal. 6 months in, she reduced the workshops from weekly to monthly, told herself it was temporary, or told her students she needed to focus on building her client base, which wasn't entirely a lie because Chidi kept introducing her to wives of executives who wanted custom pieces for weddings and milestone birthdays. The money was better. The clients were demanding. The work felt hollow in ways she couldn't articulate without sounding ungrateful for opportunity. The studio relocation happened during an argument that didn't sound like an argument. Chidi picking her up from Yaba after dark, his jaw tight as he navigated potholes and street hawkers and the beautiful chaos she'd chosen as her business location. "My colleagues' wives run boutiques in Lekki VE, places that match their brand," he said carefully, and she heard the unspoken end of that sentence. "Places that match me. This neighborhood, Amara, it's not safe. Or what kind of husband would I be if something happened to you?" She moved 3 months before he proposed, found a smaller space with better lighting and higher rent, and none of the community that had made her old studio feel like ecosystem. Her apprentices couldn't afford the commute. One by one, they stopped coming, and she told herself they'd find other mentors, told herself she was evolving beyond the stage where she needed help, told herself the loneliness in her new space was just adjustment. The South African Fashion Week invitation arrived on the same day Chidi's mother came for Omagwo planning, pre-wedding visits where his mother measured Amara against invisible standards and found her consistently lacking. "A collaboration opportunity," Amara explained, her voice bright with the first genuine excitement she'd felt in months. "They want to feature my Ankara Fusion line during—" Chidi's mother's expression stopped her mid-sentence. That particular look, wealthy Lagos women perfect, the one that communicates disappointment without moving a single facial muscle. "We're planning your wedding, NWA," she said softly, and the "we" landed like ownership. "Surely your little sewing can wait until after you've settled into married life. Chidi Bear needs a wife who's present, not one running around chasing these opportunities." Amara declined the invitation that evening, told the organisers she had family commitments, which was true in the way that lies often contain small seeds of fact. Chidi held her while she cried, stroked her hair, promised that after the wedding, after they'd established their home, she could return to her passion. I just want you to have space to breathe," he murmured. "You've been working so hard for so long. Let me take care of you." And God help her. She wanted to be taken care of, wanted to believe that rest looked like this instead of like surrender. By the time he proposed surprise engagement at his parents' compound, 200 guests she'd never met, a ring so heavy it hurt her hand, her social media had gone quiet for 4 months. Her sewing machine sat in a storage unit in Ikeja, gathering dust beside boxes of fabric samples and design sketches, and the physical evidence of who she used to be. Her calendar, once chaotic with fittings and workshops and meetings with fabric suppliers, now held different appointments: wedding planning sessions, visits with Chidi's relatives, dinners with his colleagues where she smiled and nodded and became the kind of woman who didn't talk too much about herself. She told herself it was compromise, partnership, the natural evolution of a woman who'd been independent too long, who was finally learning to build something with someone instead of alone. She told herself the tightness in her chest when she passed fabric stores was just nostalgia, not grief. Told herself the dreams where she was back in her old studio, surrounded by her girls, teaching and creating and mattering. Told herself those were just her subconscious processing change, not screaming warnings she was too afraid to hear. 3 years. That's how long it took to become someone she didn't recognize. And now she stands in Italian lace, in a bridal suite that smells like expensive flowers and her own extinction. and wonders if Chidinma's warning was ever about protecting the wedding at all. The Okonkwo compound in Enugu sprawls across 3 acres like a declaration of permanence. All high walls and imported marble and gardens, so perfect they look artificial. Amara's first visit, Chidi's mother received her in the sitting room, not the family lounge, the formal one reserved for guests who haven't earned intimacy. And her handshake lasted exactly 2 seconds, the kind of brief contact that communicates tolerance without warmth. Fashion designer, Chief Mrs. Okonkwo repeated, her lips forming the words like she was tasting something suspicious. How creative. And your people are from where exactly? She already knew. Chidi had told her. But this was a ritual Amara would learn. Or the establishing of hierarchy through questions designed to confirm what had already been decided. Anambra, Amara answered, and the that followed carried entire volumes of judgment. Not our class, not our tribe, not what we wanted for our son. The family WhatsApp group existed in the negative space of Amara's phone, an absence she only discovered when Chidi mentioned a family meeting she knew nothing about. Oh, I thought someone added you, he said vaguely, already moving past it like her exclusion was oversight instead of strategy. Events materialized last minute. My mother's birthday dinner is tomorrow, can you come? Delivered with 12 hours' notice. Just enough time to panic about what to wear, but not enough to prepare properly, to arrive already wrong-footed and apologizing. Emeka's wife, Ada Ora, floated through family gatherings like she owned the air. Her law degree from Cambridge mentioned casually but frequently. Her family connections to Enugu old money woven into every conversation. She called Chief Mrs. Okonkwo Mummy with easy affection, while Amara stumbled over what to call a woman who introduced her to friends as my son's friend, even after the engagement. At family dinners, they'd slip into rapid Igbo during important discussions, and when Amara contributed, her own Igbo fluent, thank you, her parents didn't raise her without language, Chief Mrs. Okonkwo would smile tightly and switch back to English. We don't want you to feel left out, dear. Amara learned to cook jollof rice the Okonkwo way. Less tomato, more crayfish. A specific brand of seasoning cube that Chief Mrs. Okonkwo swore made the difference. She practiced until her own mother asked why she'd stopped making it how she was taught, why suddenly the family recipe wasn't good enough. She bought traditional attire for every gathering, spent money she didn't have on George wrappers and matching blouses, jewellery in the right styles, giles tied by professionals because her own attempts were deemed charming but not quite right. She volunteered to help plan Emeka's daughter's birthday party and was assigned greeting guests at the door while Adaora handled the important vendors. She laughed at Chief Mrs. Okonkwo's stories even when they weren't funny, and stayed quiet when the older woman criticised young women these days who were too focused on careers to build proper homes, though Amara had just closed her studio on Chidi's family's implicit suggestion. Nothing worked. The harder she tried, the more transparent her desperation became, and desperation only confirmed what they already believed. She wasn't enough. Not polished enough. Not connected enough. Not the daughter-in-law they'd imagined when they planned their son's future during his years abroad. Give them time, Chidi would say after particularly brutal gatherings, his hand on her knee during silent car rides back to Lagos. They're traditional. They'll come around once we're married, once they see how happy you make me. But he never defended her to them. Never interrupted when his mother's comments landed like small cuts. Never challenged the family WhatsApp exclusion or the last-minute invitations or Ada Ora's subtle condescension. His protection existed only in private, in explanations that asked Amara to be patient, to understand, to make herself smaller until she could fit through the needle's eye of their approval. She told herself it was normal family adjustment, that all in-laws required this breaking-in period, this proving. She ignored how exhausted she felt after every Okonkwo gathering, how she'd come home and sleep for hours, like she'd been running marathons instead of sitting through lunch. She ignored Zainab's careful questions. Do they even like you? And her own mother's worried observations about how Amara had stopped mentioning Chidi's family except in vague, are positive terms that sounded like press releases. At the final wedding planning meeting, Chief Mrs. Okonkwo brought her event planner, her caterer, her decorator, decisions already made, Amara's input theoretical at best. "We know what works for Okonkwo weddings," she explained, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. "You'll thank us when everything runs smoothly." And Amara nodded, smiled, agreed, because by then she'd learned that resistance only proved their point. She didn't understand their world, didn't know how things were done, was fundamentally unprepared for the life she was marrying into. Chidinma was the only variable, warm sometimes, distant others, watching Amara with an expression that looked like pity or warning or both. And now, hours before the wedding, her whispered words echo, "Don't call anyone." Yes, what did Chidinma see that Amara spent 3 years refusing to face? The apartment in Ikoyi looks like a magazine spread, chrome fixtures and white leather furniture and abstract art Chidi selected from a gallery where the curator called him by first name. Amara's design sketches live in the bottom drawer of the guest room desk, underneath tax documents and user manuals for appliances she didn't choose. Sometimes late at night she opens that drawer just to remember she used to create things, used to have opinions about colour and texture that mattered to someone. Her mother calls every Sunday after morning mass, voice bright with the particular hopefulness of parents who sense their children drifting. "Noam, when am I seeing you? You don't visit anymore. You don't send photos of your work." The questions arrive wrapped in love but land like accusations, and Amara manufactures excuses. Traffic is terrible, she's busy with wedding planning, maybe next month. The truth stays locked behind her teeth. That Chidi sighs heavily when she mentions Onitsha, that he's called her family compound chaotic and exhausting, that last Christmas he convinced her to spend it with the Okonkwos instead, where everything was formal and cold, and she missed her mother's terrible singing during gift exchange so badly she cried in the bathroom. "Your mother called again," Chidi mentions without looking up from his laptop, and the again carries judgment, carries the implication that her mother's weekly calls are excessive, needy, evidence of a family that doesn't understand boundaries. Amara learned to put her phone on silent during his work hours, learned to return her mother's calls from the balcony where he can't hear her voice go small and apologetic. Zainab stops by unannounced one Tuesday, the way she used to before Amara moved to Ikoyi, before proximity required planning. "You've changed," she says, standing in the pristine living room like she's afraid to disturb the carefully arranged cushions. "You don't laugh anymore. When was the last time you created something that wasn't an excuse for why you can't meet up?" The words hit like open-handed slaps, true enough to sting, and Amara offers tea she doesn't drink and explanations that sound hollow even to her own ears. The cancellations started gradually, postponed brunches, missed birthdays, eventually just stopped responding promptly to messages. Their WhatsApp thread filled with Zainab's unanswered questions, her concern hardening into hurt. And Amara told herself it was temporary, that after the wedding she'd have time for friendship again, that Zainab didn't understand how much work relationships required. "She's always trying to get you into trouble," Chidi said once after Zainab invited Amara to a gallery opening featuring emerging African designers. "Going out drinking, staying out late, that's not who you are anymore." And Amara, who used to close down Lagos bars with Zainab, who used to dance and laugh and take up space without apology, found herself nodding, agreeing, declining the invitation. Her former apprentices' successes bloom across Instagram. Workshops they're teaching, client features, collaborations with brands Amara used to dream about. Our Blessing posted photos from her first solo exhibition. Chiamaka launched a sustainable fashion line, Ngozi's teaching design at Yaba Tech. Amara likes their posts from the anonymous safety of her phone screen and feels the hollow ache of watching people grow in spaces you abandoned, becoming who you were supposed to be. "Your family is too demanding," Chidi says when her cousin's wedding invitation arrives, when her aunt asks if she can sew aso ebi for a milestone birthday, when her father mentions needing help with something. "We need to focus on our future, not constantly managing everyone else's expectations. And somehow her family's love became burden. Their requests became demands. Their presence in her life became obstacle to the future he was building for them. She stopped fighting after the argument about her participating in a design mentorship program. "You're being dramatic," he said, calm in the way that made her feel hysterical for having feelings. "I just think you should consider how your choices affect us. Is this program more important than our relationship?" The answer should have been, they're not mutually exclusive, but by then she'd learned that explaining only extended arguments, that her logic was always reframed as selfishness, that peace cost silence. The silence became default. She stopped asking to visit home, stopped mentioning her design ideas, stopped suggesting outings with friends, stopped voicing preferences about furniture or food or how she spent her own time. Her voice, once confident enough to teach and negotiate and advocate, shrank to pleasant agreement, to whatever you think is best, to absence. Most evenings she sits on the balcony watching Lagos traffic blur into red taillights, and she can't remember the last time she laughed until her stomach hurt, the last time she made something with her hands, the last time someone asked what she wanted and she had an answer. She tells herself it's maturity, compromise, the natural pruning relationships require. But sometimes, in the gap between sleep and waking, she wonders if she's been negotiating her existence for someone else's comfort and calling it love. The bridal boutique in Lekki smells like tulle and other women's dreams, and Amara is examining her veil, delicate French lace with hand-sewn pearls that cost more than her first sewing machine, when she hears the voice behind her. "Amara!" Chidinma stands near the entrance, her expression unreadable, dressed in that effortless way wealthy Lagos women achieve, looking like she walked into the boutique by accident, except her eyes say otherwise. They exchange pleasantries that taste like performance until Chidinma suggests coffee, except instead of the cafe next door she leads Amara to her car, a white Mercedes parked in shade, and locks the doors with a soft click that makes Amara's pulse quicken. "I need to tell you something about my brother." Chidinma's hands grip the steering wheel though the engine is off, and her voice carries the tremor of someone about to detonate something they can't take back. The story unfolds in careful detail. The journalist who gave up Abuja, 2 years of shrinking herself before Chidi ended things because she was too ambitious after landing an international assignment. The doctor who reduced her shifts, turned down a residency abroad after Chidi proposed, spent months absorbing his subtle undermining until she finally chose herself, and he became the victim of her betrayal. "He doesn't want a partner," Chidinma says, and tears gather at the corners of her eyes, threatening the perfect makeup she probably spent an hour applying. "He wants someone who exists for him. And my mother, God, my mother encourages it. She raised him to believe his career, his comfort, his image matter more than anyone else's dreams." The car feels airless. Amara's chest tightens like the wedding dress already, like she's being fitted for a life that doesn't account for breathing. "I love my brother," Chidinma continues, her voice breaking now, "but I can't watch him do this again. You deserve to know who you're marrying." The words should land like salvation but instead feel like attack, and Amara hears herself defending him. "Chidi loves me. We're different. I chose to make changes. He didn't force me." Even as she says it, she knows how it sounds, how every woman probably said the same thing, how choice becomes meaningless when presented as the only option for keeping love. Chidinma's face falls, disappointment settling into her features like she's watching someone fail a test they studied for. She reaches into her purse, pulls out a folded paper, 2 phone numbers written in careful script. "Those are the other women. Call them. Or don't. But don't say you weren't warned." Amara takes the paper because refusing would mean admitting what acceptance implies. The numbers feel like grenades in her hand, and truth she's not ready to detonate. She thanks Chidinma, for what she's not sure, and leaves the car on unsteady legs, the veil tucked under one arm, the phone numbers burning in her purse. She never makes the calls. Instead, she tells herself Chidinma is jealous of her brother's happiness, that sibling relationships are complicated, that every family has someone who stirs up drama before weddings. She rewrites the journalist as probably difficult, the doctor as clearly uncommitted if she chose career over love. She takes 3 years of evidence, her closed studio, her abandoned apprentices, her silenced voice, her estranged family, and calls it growth, partnership, the natural compromises of mature love. The paper with phone numbers goes into the bottom of her jewelry box, buried under earrings she never wears. Some truths require action you're not ready to take, and Amara has already sent invitations, already let his mother plan everything, already become someone who doesn't recognize herself enough to fight for who she used to be. 2 weeks until the wedding. The lie feels safer than the truth. It always does, until it doesn't. Her phone sits between the bouquet and the makeup mirror, like evidence at a crime scene, and Amara's hand hovers over it the way you'd approach something that might burn. Mama Adaezi's contact photo fills the screen, her mother mid-laugh at a family gathering 2 Christmases ago, arms spread wide in that way she has of making everyone feel welcomed, loved, safe. 1 tap. Less than a second between this moment and her mother's voice. She can hear the conversation before it happens. Mama, something doesn't feel right. Her voice would crack on the words, 3 years of swallowed truth finally escaping, and her mother wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't demand explanations. Then come home, Nawaim. Come home right now. Simple as that. Zainab would drive to the venue, wouldn't even ask why, would just appear with that fierce loyalty Amara's spent 3 years avoiding. Her family would handle the embarrassment, the 300 guests, the returned gifts, the whispers that would follow them for years. But they'd handle it together, the way families do when one of their own needs saving. But then Chidi's voice surfaces, the one that's taken residence in her head like a second conscience. You're overreacting. You're being paranoid. After everything we've planned, everything I've invested. She hears him in her own thoughts now, and his logic indistinguishable from hers, and she can't tell any more where his influence ends and her own judgment begins. She scrolls through contacts with shaking hands. Mama Adaz, last call 6 days ago. A brief conversation about final guest count that Amara rushed through because Chidi was waiting for dinner. Zainab, 11 days. And that call ended with uncomfortable silence after Amara made another excuse about being too busy to meet. Kioma, her cousin who used to call her every Sunday. 3 weeks, and Amara can't remember what they talked about, only that she was distracted, eager to end it. When did the gaps grow so wide? When did she stop being someone people could reach? The evidence displays in timestamps and decreasing call frequency, a digital record of her systematic isolation, and she feels the truth like nausea. She did this to herself. Every cancelled plan, every shortened call, every time she chose his comfort over their concern, she built this cage herself and locked it from the inside. She picks up the phone, puts it down. Her fingers tremble so badly the screen blurs. She picks it up again, her mother's face smiling at her from a time when Amara still knew how to receive love without suspicion, still believed she deserved it without earning it through silence and shrinking. But calling means admitting she was wrong. Admitting means leaving. Leaving means standing in front of everyone who warned her. Zainab's careful questions, her mother's concerned observations, Chidinma's desperate intervention, and saying they were right while she was busy defending the man who was erasing her. It means facing 3 years as wasted time, lost possibility, a studio closed and apprentices abandoned, and dreams deferred for a future that was always designed to exclude her authentic self. The makeup artist's knock shatters the moment. Miss Amara, they're ready for you. Ready. The word lands like a sentencing. 300 guests waiting. Chidi at the altar in his perfectly tailored agbada. His mother in the front row already claiming victory. The life she's been too afraid to refuse, too exhausted to fight, too isolated to escape. Amara sets the phone down one final time, and the silence where her mother's voice should be fills the room like floodwater. She stands, smooths the Italian lace over her hips, and walks toward the door. Not calling isn't neutral. Not calling is a choice. And she's made it. So the corridor between the bridal suite and the ceremony feels infinite. Each step a memory crystallizing into evidence. The wedding planner fusses with her train, and through the silk drapes Amara can see the aisle stretched before her like a trial. White petals scattered across carpet, 300 witnesses waiting for her voluntary surrender. Step 1. The Ankara jumpsuit she designed herself, bold geometric patterns in orange and indigo, the first outfit she wore to meet his colleagues. A bit provocative, don't you think? Chidi said in the car, his tone light, but his meaning clear. And she went home and changed into something beige and forgettable. Something that didn't announce her presence before she entered a room. She called it consideration. Step 2. Her biggest fashion show. The one Genevieve magazine covered. Her fusion pieces on actual runway with actual models and actual validation of everything she'd worked for. He didn't come. A work emergency, he said, except she saw the photos later on his colleague's Instagram. Drinks at a rooftop bar. Business that apparently couldn't wait but also included laughter and bottles of champagne. She forgave him because he sent flowers the next day with a note about being proud of her little hobby. Step 3. The day she signed the papers closing her studio, her hands shaking so badly the pen kept slipping, her heart understanding what her mind refused to admit, that she was amputating part of herself and calling it growth. He took her to dinner at an expensive restaurant, ordered for her, talked about the house they'd buy, the trips they'd take, the life she'd have once she wasn't so stressed all the time. She thanked him for the distraction instead of screaming that she needed someone to ask if she was okay, if this was what she wanted, if dying inside counted as stress. Step 4, 5, 6, 7. Uncountable now, the times she opened her mouth to speak and swallowed words instead. Every dinner where his opinions became their opinions. Every decision where her preference dissolved into whatever you think is best. Every conversation where she performed agreement like a practiced script until she couldn't remember what her own voice sounded like when it wasn't seeking approval. The memories accumulate with each step forward, and she sees it now. How her laughter disappeared first, then her opinions, then her dreams. Each disappearance so gradual she didn't notice until she'd become a woman who existed in negative space defined by what she no longer did, no longer said, no longer was. The drapes part, and she sees him at the altar, Chidi in white agbada, with gold threading, handsome and successful and beloved. His smile confident because why wouldn't it be? He never had to change anything. Never compromised his career or his friends or his family or his comfort. Never made himself smaller. Never silenced his voice. Never questioned whether he was enough. The life he wanted was the life they built, and her wants became irrelevant so gradually she learned to stop having them. The cage wasn't his creation alone. The truth arrives like drowning, like clarity and horror mixed. She built this prison with her own hands. Every time she chose peace over truth, his comfort over her boundaries, temporary harmony over permanent worth. Every time she told herself love required this much sacrifice, she laid another brick. He just stood there accepting her offerings, and she called his acceptance love. His family fills the front rows, numerous and dominant, Chief Mrs. Okonkwo already wearing victory on her face. Her own family, smaller section to the right, her mother's hopeful expression that makes Amara want to weep. Zainab in the third row, worry carved into her features like she's watching someone walk toward a cliff. Don't call anyone. Chidinma's words echo, and suddenly Amara understands. Not a warning to keep quiet, to protect family secrets, to preserve the illusion. A warning not to sacrifice herself again. Not to make the final call that would summon people to witness her complete erasure. Not even at the altar. Especially not at the altar. The music swells. that entrance song she didn't choose, and the wedding planner nudges her forward. Time fractures. She sees herself clearly for the first time in 3 years. A woman who's been negotiating her existence, bartering her dreams, trading her voice for the promise of being chosen by someone who never valued what he was receiving. The shattering is terrible, the clarity is worse, and liberation feels exactly like drowning. The officiant's voice cuts through the music, deep and ceremonial, calling everyone to rise, to witness, to participate in what they believe will be a covenant. The wedding planner adjusts Amara's train one final time, her touch impersonal and efficient, or arranging fabric the way you'd arrange merchandise in a window display. This is it. The threshold. Everything before this moment was preparation. Everything after will be consequence. The internal calculation happens at lightning speed, brutal and clear. Walk down this aisle, and she becomes Mrs. Okonkwo. She gains the conditional acceptance she's been auditioning for. Maybe, eventually, if she performs perfectly, for the next decade. She keeps the Ikoyi apartment with its chrome fixtures and furniture she didn't choose. She keeps the lifestyle, the security, the social position, the answer to, "What does your husband do?" that impresses at parties. She loses the last fragments of who she was, the designer, the teacher, the woman who used to laugh until her stomach hurt, who used to have opinions, who used to take up space without apologizing for breathing. She teaches any daughter she might have that love looks like this, systematic erasure disguised as partnership. She spends the rest of her life smaller than she was created to be, and calls it maturity. Or she doesn't walk. She faces 300 guests who will whisper about her for years. She disappoints her mother who bought a new Jeel for this day. She returns gifts, cancels vendors, becomes the story people tell as warning, the bride who lost her mind at the altar. She starts over at 31, her career dormant, her studio closed, her apprentices scattered, her savings depleted on wedding expenses she'll never recover. Alone, starting from less than zero. But she breathes again. Her voice returns, rusty maybe, uncertain maybe, but hers. She stops waking up exhausted from the effort of being acceptable. She teaches herself, finally, painfully, that she matters even when no one's grading her performance. She thinks of the journalist and the doctor, the women whose numbers sit in her jewelry box like unexploded bombs. 2 women who made the same calculations she's making now, who walked different timelines of the same pattern. She thinks of Chidinma's tears, the desperate warning of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. She thinks of herself 10 years from now, even more diminished, even more convinced this is just how love works, whispering warnings to the next woman Chidi brings home after this marriage finally breaks her completely. The music starts, canon in D, traditional, in chosen by his mother because it's what we always use at Okonkwo weddings. The processional every bride in his family has walked down, the notes that signal her entrance, her agreement, her surrender. Amara looks down at her bouquet. White roses, calla lilies, green hypericum berries. Chief Mrs. Okonkwo selected them 3 months ago. Didn't ask what Amara wanted, just informed her that these flowers photographed best and matched the family colours. Even her flowers weren't her choice. Even this, the thing she's supposed to carry as she makes the most important walk of her life, belongs to someone else's vision. Her hands start shaking. The bouquet trembles, petals quivering like they can feel what's coming. The wedding planner touches her elbow. It's time, time. The word echoes. Time to walk, time to choose. And time to decide if self-preservation outweighs everything else. His approval, their expectations, the life she's supposed to want, the woman she's supposed to become. Amara takes a breath that feels like the first real breath in 3 years, and she makes her decision. Amara begins to walk. The music swells, guests rise in rustling waves of expensive fabric, and 300 faces turn toward her with expectation. But her feet don't carry her toward the altar. They turn left, toward the exit, toward the silk drapes that separate ceremony from escape, toward air that doesn't taste like capitulation. The realization ripples through the crowd in slow motion. Confused murmurs, sharp gasps. Someone's aunt saying, "What is she doing?" in a voice too loud for discretion. She walks past rows of shocked guests, past Chidi's family section where Chief Mrs. Okonkwo's face transforms from triumph to horror, past her own mother who half rises from her seat with hands reaching out and confusion blooming across her features. Zainab understands first. She always does. She leaps up, her royal blue aso-ebi bright against the chaos, and follows without question the way best friends do when the explanations can wait, but the support cannot. "Amara!" Chidi's voice cuts through the music, commanding first, the tone he uses when her behavior requires correction. "Amara?" Confusion now, like she's malfunctioning, like walking away wasn't an option programmed into his understanding of how this day would unfold. Then anger, sharp and familiar. "Amara." But she doesn't turn around, doesn't owe him eye contact or explanation or the closure he thinks he deserves. Her feet keep moving, heel, toe, Italian lace whispering against marble, the most honest thing she's worn in 3 years. Outside, the parking lot sun hits her like baptism. She finally stops between luxury cars that belong to people who came to witness her disappearance. Her hands shake so violently the bouquet falls, white roses scattering across asphalt like evidence of something broken, something finally, necessarily broken. Zainab reaches her, breathless and beautiful and completely, fiercely present. "I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here." Amara pulls out her phone with trembling fingers. No hesitation this time. No internal negotiation. She calls her mother and when Mama Adai's answers, voice tight with confusion and worry and hope, Amara says the words she should have said weeks ago. "Mama, come get me. Please come get me." 3 months later, Amara sits in a new studio space in Surulere, smaller than her first, brighter than anything she had with Chidi, filled with the particular music of sewing machines and young voices asking questions she actually knows how to answer. Fabric samples cover every surface, Ankara prints in colours she chose, textures that make her hands itch to create. Her phone buzzes with a client inquiry, someone who found her through Instagram where she started posting again, tentative at first, then bolder, her own voice returning in captions about design and second chances. She's rebuilding, slowly, messily, authentically hers. Some clients from before returned. Some apprentices came back. Some things stay lost, but she's learning that loss and liberation sometimes wear the same face. Chidinma sent a text 2 weeks after. "Thank you for being brave enough to walk away. He would have destroyed you." Amara saved it, reads it sometimes when doubt creeps in during quiet hours, when she wonders if she overreacted, if she should have tried harder, if 3 years means she owed him the rest of her life. She hasn't spoken to Chidi, doesn't need to. She said everything required when she chose herself, when her feet turned left instead of forward, when survival outweighed approval for the first time in 3 years. Some nights she wonders if she made the right choice. Then she catches her reflection in the studio window, her real smile, her clear eyes, shoulders unburdened by the weight of constant performance. And she knows. She walked down the aisle in the wrong direction and found herself on the right path. Strength isn't cinematic, it's simply waking up each morning and choosing to exist on your own terms. It's enough. She's enough. Finally, she believes it.